Scott, I know we've been through the 5 stages of the omnichannel shopping journey, but I think we could probably just spend a few moments thinking about metrics and measurement, because it seems such a critical part of the omnichannel strategy.
Yeah, absolutely, Piers. And I think one of the things that we kind of see across all of those stages is both that critical kind of consumer data that you have, and how that is connected at each stage and each channel to help understand who that consumer is and driving them through the appropriate next step, creating that sort of consistency and connectivity, if you will. And then also from an operational point of view, once you understand things like inventory, things like traffic flow, things like staffing, and even the employee journey in many ways, you can begin to make new decisions based on how to run your operations better, more efficiently, meet new opportunities for serving the shopper in new ways. So really excited to hear what some of the experts have to say there as well.
That's great. Let's turn to one final time to them.
So Albert, we know that measurement is something that you're super passionate about. And then obviously we have a lot of folks in the audience that are thinking about how do we roll out some of these initiatives? How do we pilot and test? Maybe you can talk a little bit about some of the best practices around kind of like bringing these things to life within the context of retail operations.
Scott, thank you for your question. There's probably very few topics that I'm more passionate about than the actual measurement and the KPIs that surround omnichannel initiatives and digital transformation experiences from a retail perspective. So let me take a step back. For me, and let me answer, think about the way that I like to think about this is with the question, right? How can we manage what we don't measure? And the answer is we can't, right? And so one of the things that I've seen in the industry today is a lot of retailers are getting credit for just merely executing and putting out experiences. But for me, the question I always wanted to answer was, does this experience or does this pilot need to live on, or does it need to die right here? So for me, let me give you a real world example, Scott. One of the projects that I worked on for the Home Depot was our pilot store. It was our Store of the Future initiative. It went live in the 2017 timeframe. But imagine this, 100 unique pilots in a single store. And again, in all of the massive mountain moving that brought that all to life. Think about it this way. Of the 100 pilots, a huge percentage of those pilots were one and done, meaning that thank you for playing, we learned a lot, but this was not going to move forward. A smaller percentage were, okay, we're going to actually expand this to a subset of the stores. We think we're onto something. It's not going to die here. We're going to expand to a subset of the chain. But Scott, a small percentage of those 100 pilots were just slam dunk, no-brainer home runs that we really wanted to make sure that we double down on. If we didn't have the right measurements in place, if we didn't have the data and the KPIs in place, we would have never been able to have those kinds of insights. So for me, when you start talking about innovation and omnichannel, right at the very first conversation, we need to also be talking about how are we measuring omnichannel and what does success look like?
And I would just add, that this is a conversation that's not about price, is that this relationship that you can have with your team and with your client doesn't just happen in the luxury space. This can happen anywhere, should be happening anywhere, because that's how you build that loyalty and acquisition. And Net Promoter is all about likelihood to recommend. So, and that is at every price. And so I love, my office is here in Times Square in New York City. There's a Starbucks across the street that used to be the worst place to try to get a coffee, because all the tourists, everybody was here. And having been in the office now for several months, now I go in and they're like, hey, Ron, it's like now it's my favorite Starbucks in the middle of Times Square because the traffic's down. So they've built a relationship with me. And every brand has the opportunity to do that, to build relationships that are inherent of how we're all going to grow our businesses for years to come.
Hey, John, I'm curious from a measurement point of view, how you're able to sort of connect back some of these campaigns or touch points to your brand partners, and what kind of things you're able to sort of provide to them.
Well, that's a great question. I mean, because we are a registered user base, we know our listeners, we know when they tune in, the times they tune in, and the content they listen to. So we can track behaviors in a way that allows us to convey back to our clients the response rates or at least the engagement of these programs. So, and most of the programs do lead back to an experience on the Spotify platform. So in that way, the clients can actually monitor that activity for themselves. I mean, there's some of our brand profiles that have literally millions of likes because the content is exciting and interesting, and the followers of those profiles keep coming back for more.
Yeah, it's so great. It's exciting to see, again, like the Spotify has like a key point in culture, and then for a brand to sort of associate themselves with that and have a point of view is such a powerful way of kind of connecting with audiences today. Awesome. Well, John, thanks so much for sharing with us today, and excited to see what kind of things you guys are up to next.
Sounds good. Thank you very much for having me.
So Lee, we know that having a deep understanding of a customer is so important in today's marketplace. And I wonder if you can talk about some of the big challenges that you're seeing in terms of retailers with respect to omnichannel, and then having that sort of understanding of CRM and how that ultimately kind of translates into a personalized experience.
Yeah, absolutely. When Endear launched, even today, most of the brands that we talk to, we ask how they're doing this kind of work today, and they're still answering pen and paper. They're still talking about physical binders. And I think what's so funny is in any other sales space, whether it be software or even cars or anything, there's always a CRM in place. And especially now, I think, quite frankly, with COVID, the retail industry has realized how important it is to really keep that data up to date and also give it to salespeople in a way that is relevant to them. So for example, the metrics that a salesperson would see in Endear is really about AOV. What is, their lifetime value? How long have they been shopping? How many times have they purchased? How many times have they returned? And aggregating those things to give a really high level perspective of, who is this customer within the world of, say, Rebag or any other brand using Endear. So I think the power of technology is something that the industry is really now embracing. And omnichannel doesn't just apply to CRM. It applies to everything, right? I think every brand has to decide, am I going to go omnichannel on my inventory? What does that look like? Am I going to go omnichannel on my sales and my marketing? It's really, everything needs to fit together, and clienteling is just one piece, but it's actually a really critical piece because it has such an influence over the customer's shopping experience at the end of the day.
Yeah, I love that insight into that whole omni-channel piece. It's all of these foundational kind of elements that all fit together. And then, as you say, I mean, in the best case scenario, the customer doesn't even see any of this happening. It's just kind of the magic in the background, so to speak. So Jason, I know you guys are obviously testing out a bunch of different technologies with your new House of Sport concept, and just sort of thinking about how you empower your store associates, et cetera. Maybe you can talk a little bit about how you approach the whole sort of experimentation and before moving to scale.
So what we do a lot of times is we test a lot of our new technology initiatives. And that just provides a whole different level of testing because, one, the amount of foot traffic coming in that store, because it's servicing a greater area, right? So you have many more athletes coming in. So as a technology team, we can send teams up there whether they're testing out a teammate facing app or an athlete, we could test it there on top of the other stores that we test a lot of our new technologies. And it's been an extremely powerful way for us to verify before we go all in on certain things that we want to build for our athletes.
Yeah, that's great. That's such a good insight for the folks in the audience to hear, is like, you know, it's not just making a bet on something and then just pushing it out. It's like really kind of having that thoughtfulness in terms of how you're approaching it.
Absolutely. And a lot of times in the past, we dictated how the technology worked for our teammates. Instead of doing that, you know, they're part of that experience. We're learning from them. They're dictating how we build that solution. Really leveraging their knowledge and their input of the athlete, their subject matter expertise in sports to provide that experience. And that's paid off as well. So just the usage they get out of the app, understanding where their pain points are, where we can help them and bring something in that allows them to spend more time with their athletes.
Amazing. Todd, you've kind of hinted at this already in terms of the role that data plays within the sort of broader organization and your approach to omnichannel. I wonder if you can kind of give us a sense of some of the pieces, both from a operational and sort of consumer customer point of view, that you kind of view as mission critical with respect to that. And then I guess with that as the sort of foundation of the question, how do you kind of see that, or how do you distribute that in the right way across the organization? And then how does that kind of inform the way you think about things in a more strategic way as well?
You know, to be honest on this one, I think this is an area where we're still maturing. This is an area where I think a lot of companies are still kind of figuring a lot of these pieces out, because we haven't necessarily been built on a foundation of utilizing customer data as well as we could. So this has been really an area of focus for the last couple of years, and will be an ongoing area of focus for us. So there's so many data points that you can capture. What are the true data points that matter? That's been a lot of our soul searching and a lot of our time spent. A lot of it is, you know, at the highest level, what's your overall customer satisfaction with the different parts of your journey? You know, what is the kind of areas of opportunity, the friction points with a current journey, or with the multitude of journeys that you have going on? You know, those are kind of the basics. Then there comes into the operational metrics around certain services. So we rolled out curbside, last year. You know, what is our time to car? What is our number of, sandwiches that are delivered that are at the quality that the customer expects, or at the, or do we deliver all the items that are expected? Like looking at the quality of service, the time to car, the overall repeat usage of a service, and looking at things like basket size, looking at basket mix. There's a variety of things that we look at. So it really depends on what are the core features of the initiatives we're rolling out. What are the things that we can also highlight to help our associates and our operation partners help champion these things? Because I think that's where a lot of companies go a little wrong, is there's kind of a separation between, we'll say, the marketing team and the operations team. We really look at it as a way of what are the right things that we can also put out there that we can share as a core metric between the two teams, that allows us to have really those everyday champions at the store level to help us kind of really focus in on some of those key metrics. So there's a lot of things like that we will share. So again, there's like holistic metrics, there are service metrics, there are the dual ownership metrics that we put in place to really kind of, again, get people excited and really champion these services as we roll them out, and to also give us feedback so we can continuously hone our journeys and our work and kind of our overall data approach. And I would say that even goes within kind of our headquarters as well too, is like, again, there's a lot of ways that we want to be very careful with customer data. There's lots of ways that we want to be able to model it in certain ways. There's a lot of behaviors and training that we do internally to make sure that we're being good stewards of the data, that we're focusing on the right KPIs, that we're training on the right way to use. But a lot of it also is like, how can we kind of rally the troops around the core, and how can we really understand what are the ones that are going to really move the business, but also move the customer experience, because it's really about that value exchange to say, like, we're getting this data, how can we be good custodians of it, but also how can we drive maximum customer impact and business impact? And that value exchange is an important conversation that we have on a regular basis at Wawa.
Yeah, I love that idea in terms of, it is very much an exchange between the consumer and the business, and figuring out exactly, like, you don't need to capture everything, but there are some critical things, and how do you deliver on that? And then I love that sort of idea of using that information to sort of continually learn and improve as a business as well. What's the type of data that you're capturing either now? I mean, obviously with the magic wand, it's even more sort of detailed, but like even at a sort of earlier stage in the business, what kind of things were you able to capture and report back to your brand partners?
If you're a brand that is in Showfields, you literally have a merchant console that shows you in real time what is happening in your space in a way that you can understand it. It looks almost like Google Analytics. So in the same way you would understand how many people came to your homepage, how many people clicked into a product, the way that Showfields works is on the back end as a brand, you're seeing how many people are walking into Showfields, how many people are walking by your space, how many people are coming in, what products they're picking up, did they interact with your screen, did they purchase? And that allows you to actually have a physical funnel, right? You can actually all of a sudden decide where the dropout in your funnel is happening. It's been really interesting for us as we're working with now over 450 brands, but we've been able to take this data and make it actionable. A good example of this is we had a beauty brand that had 60 different SKUs. They wanted to showcase everything in their line. And even though it was a small space, they were really proud of all those products. What we were finding is that if people picked up one of these 3 products that were their hero products, 90% of the time it went to purchase. If they started with one of the other products, it usually didn't convert. So what we were able to do with that data is come back to them and say, let us go down to just these 3 products, just for a week, and let's see what happens to sales. By removing all of the clutter and really focusing on the 3 products that convert, we're able to increase their sales by 70%.
That's incredible. Yeah, I love that idea of, again, the same way you talked about your A/B testing on a website, and now you can do that within the context of the store and really figure out what's going to be meaningful and what's going to move product at the end of the day. As your technology kind of begins to play a bigger role within the sort of customer experience, do you sort of envision this being like a customer shopping a site with their kind of fit match profile in hand? Is it like, how are you guys thinking about this in terms of that sort of moving forward once a customer has gone through this process?
So what we believe is brands will start adopting this because they see the benefit of, okay, if I have that data on Jessica, I can give her a better customer experience and I can reduce that return profile, significantly. And so once brands start adopting this in their apps and their stores and their websites, we believe that, from a customer perspective, it will become now commonplace. I think everything will be more personalized, where you can go to a site and through APIs and through your fit profile, you'll be able to just find that item in 10% of the time it normally would have taken you. And brands who don't adopt that methodology will be at a significant disadvantage because customers are used to it. And we see it in our data. So this is, again, very high level, but the integrations we've done so far, we've seen 7 out of 10 people opt in to do this process. We've seen extremely high conversion rates and extremely high engagement rates. So that we believe that at least at the very base level, the shopper is extremely ready for this and willing to partake. And then now the domino effect and the acceleration will come from retailers and brands pushing it down in their experiences.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I mean, we talk a lot about the, kind of one-to-one experience, either in a digital context or a physical one, where a brand or an associate for a brand or retailer has access to past purchase behavior and customer history and things like that, and I can naturally see the sort of fit profile within the fashion and apparel context being another key piece of that experience moving forward. And I guess, Seb, for us, we think, post-purchase is always like a huge opportunity for retailers and brands to kind of continue that conversation and relationship after a purchase is made. Obviously, there's the sort of problem resolution piece, but there's so many other ways that companies can kind of continue that conversation. Can you talk about some of the ways you're sort of seeing conversation playing out in that kind of post-purchase relationship building, if you will?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways. I mean, I think this is sort of a big part of where we as a company came from, right? So dealing with big post-sale demand, the contact center world, which is not really sort of where retail's come from. But certainly we can learn a lot from other industries there, right? And I think some of the big drivers, that really kind of make, big gains in terms of efficiency, for example, here are knowing who your customer is, right? You've sold to them. So when they're coming back to you, it's about identity and the context that brings, right? And then it's obviously personalization and prediction are the kinds of things you want to start doing if you can, using that information. So better discovery of need, for example, and getting from, simple things like targeting. So if someone's returning to your website, simple identity is cookies, right? Or whatever it might be. Hard identity is you're logging in and you're on some kind of loyalty program with me. So I can actually get your real identity here. But going from, using that context to target an experience to you, I know you bought something proactively. Are you happy with that? Is there anything I can help you with, right? So reaching out to getting towards prediction. So not only reaching out based on the fact that you bought something, but knowing more about you, so I can actually sort of say, you look like you might have an issue here. Is that right? And a sort of tangible example of that, actually, we've working for quite a long time with a leading electrical goods retailer in the US. And in the post-sale support side, we've built prediction models, for example, for customer intents. So they tend to use voice channel. So when your electrical goods go wrong, it tends to be a high touch channel most consumers will go for, right? So they'll pick up the phone because they want the reassurance of that. So their voice bot, we've built them, or their IVR in sort of our old world of talking about it, right? It's hard language dealing with issues with a very complex product portfolio. How someone will tell you they've got an issue can vary. They don't say, my X is broken, right? That's not really how it works. And so we get pretty good accuracy in the voice bot world there. But actually, when we start to put prediction models in, we start to look at the context, which product they bought, what the history of that has been in terms of other issues, those kinds of inputs, right? We start to be able to run prediction models that say, there's a chance for you specifically that this might be why you're calling today. And instead of building rules models to sort of put that together, we use machine learning to do this now, right? So we create a machine learning model that says you are likely to be having an issue with a product. So instead of saying, please tell me how I can help you, the experience is, you're possibly calling about an issue with that X you bought last week, right? This product you bought, the camera you bought last week. Is that right? Yes or no? No hard language, very straightforward experience. And we've gone from 30% opt-in to 70% opt-in. So 70% we're getting right when we ask that yes, no question. So it's a very compressed experience. Customer thinks, great, you know me, you know what's going on. But also from that particular retailer's perspective, that means we're getting 30% better actual self-service usage in terms of creating that defect resolution, right? So that's real money that's going back to the organization as well as that great experience. So it's that personalization prediction piece post-service which really helps. The other one I would say is, just expanding that proactive piece. We've been doing this in targeting on the web, for example, or in a mobile apps for quite a while, right? Reaching out and proactive experience, but actually going a little bit further and putting messaging together with proactive. So post-sale, proactively following up, right? So rather than waiting for your customers to call you, actually getting ahead of it to them. But that means you can drive towards more efficient channels, right? So using asynchronous messaging so they don't call you, which is an expensive channel to deal with. And also the hours that you can reach out in, making sure it's actually at times when you've got people to deal with the problem, right? So there's a huge amount of efficiency in that sort of proactive messaging, provided you can get the timing right and you can automate, a reasonable amount of that demand as well. So that's sort of the post-sale world. It's a very different animal in terms of the experience and what we're trying to drive. And it tends to sort of obviously be more about cost efficiency outcomes versus sort of driving revenue at that point. But certainly, if you get that part right, the loyalty equation means the revenue will come, right? So I think that's sort of
yeah, absolutely. That's so well said. I was thinking that as well. Again, like that's the these are these like points of friction that then like if you solve for them, then that kind of closes the loop on the customer relationship in so many ways. How do you see the role of the store kind of changing moving forward?
I've been talking to our clients recently, and they've also confirmed my idea that we will have two kinds of shops, I think, in a very near future. One are the traditional shops that we are used to, where we go and browse and touch and feel. It's kind of like a weekend outing. But the others will be these small showroom type of shops that you use to just to go and see the latest trends or see the latest models. You do buy online, and then you have pick up the Popey solution at the store where you can get the basics. But at the store is small and tiny, and they only have these specific models, like just the latest collection or the newest models. So you go and browse, and then you buy online again. So it's kind of showroom type of store.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see again with the, that shrinking footprint is definitely something that we're seeing. And, you can imagine this almost kind of connection with like a big hub, maybe flagship store, and then some of these smaller stores that you describe, where they kind of work together in a network in many ways. And it's that high touch experience paired with that sort of like smart logistics kind of piece, which is really interesting. And I'm sure the technology and the solutions that you're providing are sort of key to enabling that future in many ways.
And I think it's very clever in terms of also, saving money. An online store can hold thousands of items, but especially now where people are getting used to buying online, you don't need to have a physical store to have thousands of items. And I think that the success of this model depends on how well the retailers know their customer base. If they can offer what the customer base needs, what they're interested in that showroom, then it's a winning model.
Yeah, it's interesting because again, I think that sort of it's that kind of understanding, connecting that with data about what's going to be most impactful to sort of like have in these stores, and then again having the sort of like the solution that sits on top of that, which can fulfill from kind of anywhere. So it's really interesting. That's great. Thank you for sharing these insights. This has been really interesting, and love to see the various ways that this technology can play a role in the omnichannel environment.
Well, it looks like, Scott, we're coming to a close. I really want to thank all the speakers, and I want to thank the attendees as we kind of draw to the end of the show. Scott, how did you feel the event went?
Well, it was great. Very exciting cast of characters who shared lots of amazing insights today. Great conversation within the context of chat. Obviously, always excited to have our audience really participating and kind of leaning into things, and excited to have everybody read the report, react to everything that was shared today, and looking forward to the next one as well.
Yeah, do check out the reports.